From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. We often think of destructive wildfires in terms of their size and the damage they cause. Acres burned, buildings destroyed. But emerging research says not all major wildfires belong in the same category. Some wildfires ignite and spread explosively. They move so swiftly that firefighting crews simply can't keep up. The 2021 Marshall Fire, which scorched about 1,000 homes in Boulder County, is one recent example of what my guest today calls a fast fire. And this more destructive type of wildfire is becoming more common in a hotter, drier, and more densely populated American West. Virginia Iglesias is an environmental scientist who studies wildfire and has published research on what makes fast fires especially dangerous. She's the director of Earth Lab at the University of Colorado Boulder. Virginia joined me to talk about how we might respond differently to fast fires and why she wanted to research them.
If you were to talk with a firefighter, they're perfectly aware of the dangers of a fast fire, but it hadn't been explored in the scientific community. What we did was to use satellite data. And we created an algorithm to map how fires were expanding across the landscape.
Okay.
And with that, it could estimate changes in growth rates. But we only have satellite data that can be used for fire reconstructions going back to the mid-'80s. So that's quite recent.
What makes something a fast fire? How fast does a fast fire move to just not be a typical wildfire?
They move faster than 1,600 hectares a day.
And a hectare is about?
It's approximately a city block.
Okay, about a city block. So that's 1,600 city blocks in a day.
Exactly.
I can't even wrap my head around how fast that is and how big of an area that is.
Not many fires are that fast. However, these fast fires account for 78% of the structures destroyed and for over 60% of suppression efforts.
And so there is a direct relationship between how fast a fire grows with how destructive it is?
Yes, exactly. So if a fast fire approaches a community, it's harder for emergency responders to get there and stop it. And that's why they are so devastating for our communities.
What are some of the main reasons we're seeing more of these hotter and faster and more destructive fires here in Colorado and across the West?
It's for two reasons. On the one hand, more people and more communities exposed to fire. And on the other hand, we have climate change, which is producing, generally speaking, drier conditions in the western U.S.
Sure.
We have lots of fuel that has been accumulating for decades, in part because of natural phenomena, but also because of fire suppression. We've been excluding fires, and very successfully, since the beginning of the 20th century.
Right.
And without fire, fuel accumulates on the landscape. So there's more fuel, drier conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a third component that we need for fire, and that is ignition. And not only during certain times of the year as natural ignitions, but throughout the year. So now, pretty much any time when there are conditions more favorable for fires to spread, there are humans to provide an ignition. So that's why we have more fires.
And that's why we're reading more and hearing more about this now. The Marshall Fire, which destroyed entire neighborhoods in Superior and Louisville, that changed the way that we think about what is a fire-prone area.
Yes.
It's, not these blazes charring vast acres of remote forested areas that a lot of us picture. How did the Marshall Fire change researchers' understanding of where the most vulnerable areas for wildfire are now?
We've been looking at changes in fire dynamics for a while now. Mm-hmm. And before the Marshall Fire, we noticed that there was an increase in fire frequency and size in areas that were not forested, so grasslands, with Marshall, we got the empirical support that indeed something was changing in grasslands, and this intersection, this area of overlap of homes and grasslands was becoming important in terms of wildfire.
And those grasslands are ripe for fast fires?
Yes, we're just getting started with research on fast fires.
Mm-hmm.
However, we have some educated hypotheses that we can make. We know that for a fast fire to happen, we need dry fuel. So the drier it is, the faster the fire will move, because the first thing that a flame will do is to dry out the moisture around the flame, and then it'll spread. And so if the fuel is drier, this process is faster.
Yeah.
Then fuel load also matters, right? It depends on how much fuel we have, how much energy we have available for drying out the fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Topography also matters. Then there's another critical component, and that is wind.
Yes.
Wind is one of the main drivers because it'll just spread the flame and dry out the fuel ahead of the flame. What happens in grasslands is that we have lots of dry fuel, and also it's fine fuel. So fine fuel ignites faster.
That makes sense. Kind of like when you build a campfire, you need the big logs, but then it's that little dry tinder that gets you going.
Exactly the same phenomenon.
You have a new research paper coming out soon. In it, you predict that unless we change our approach, the millions of dollars in wildfire damage we see across the West will triple by the year 2060. How do you think policymakers could prevent that from happening?
First of all, climate action. Fires are largely driven by climate change. These changes in fire, that is. So climate action is crucial. Fuel management as well. So prescribed burns are a critical piece in decreasing the fire side of the equation. Then the other part is designing and planning better where we're going to develop so that the probability of losing homes decreases, and also retrofitting our homes so that they are less flammable. That's a step in the right direction because it's addressing the issue of exposure of homes we are building into wildlands that may burn, and also it's addressing how we are building and how we can do it better.
Virginia Iglesias is an environmental scientist and director of Earth Lab at CU Boulder. She spoke with me about the recent increase in hotter, faster fires in Colorado and across the western U.S. We'll have links where you can learn more in the show notes and at KUNC.org. By the way, we'll have another story about the evolving West for you tomorrow as we explore how shorter winters are changing the ski season in Colorado and how ski resorts are responding. Just a reminder, you can find all of our interviews in our podcast feed or at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.